Hey and welcome to the third episode of this format. I've just recently made a second channel, so if you haven't subbed to it yet, make sure to do so. Link is down below. The first few videos will be coming out really soon. Since this format will only include topics on Reddit, you can make suggestions for future episodes by posting on my subreddit. Well, before we start, you know the drill. If you like this video, don't forget to sub to the channel. And since YouTube has been messing with me for the past 3 videos, this video is sponsored. Before we move on, let's talk about today's sponsor, Hero Wars. It's been a year since I joined Hero Wars. On a summer day just like today, my faithful friends went to the forest and never returned. As it turned out, they were attacked by a bunch of accursed heroes. A red-headed she-fiend with a chain gun, her loyal priestess of light with a staff, a fiery demon with a reaper's scythe, and a ruthless knight clad in shining armor. My servants fought with all they had, almost securing a victory, but all of a sudden, swords began raining down from the sky, shredding them to pieces. Watch this story unfold in Hero Wars. So, join the game now along with 100 million players from around the world, and get a super chest with 5 top heroes, one of them is secret, as well as 600 emeralds and 30,000 gold. Scan this QR code on screen, or download the game from the link down below the video in the video description, and I'll see you in Hero Wars. So this one comes from a user that has since deleted their account. It's a wild story that also has its backstory, but one thing at a time. Let me first read out the post. I will change a few sentences in the following because of the grammar and vocabulary. This was November 2016 in Glasgow, Scotland. I must admit, I had been single and alone for some time, and it was driving me crazy. That's when I met Laura. She came across as a very sweet girl and all, but she was in a hurry to meet me. So I did. She insisted we go to the pub. No fancy dates were necessary to her, and I didn't mind this. At first glance, I knew I'd been swindled. She looked different from what I've seen before, but I didn't mind. I was just happy to have a date, since I'm not exactly good looking myself. I gave her a chance to redeem herself. We got talking, and after a few beers, things started to get more intimate. Before I go further, she was quite an overweight girl with long dark hair, and she had eyeshadow similar to Amy Winehouse. She told me that she was a huge fan. I'd asked about her hobbies and interests, etc., but she asked me to talk more about myself. I told her about my job, and she yawned sarcastically. "Let's talk about your sex life," she said. Needless to say, I was aroused. So yeah, I didn't have much to say in that department, as it had been a while since I had sex, and I was very honest with her about that. I asked about hers, and she said she has her kinks, and that she has done things that I never imagined before. "When I see what I can do," she said, and asked me to go to her place. So at this point I was starting to feel very drunk, which I was amazed at, since this was only onto my 4th pint. I did have 2 shots though, and put it down to this. We waited for a taxi, and she was holding my hand excitedly, whispering into my ear that she was going to do some things to me that I'd never experienced before. In a way, I actually couldn't wait to just sleep. My head felt heavier than the rest of my body. It was like the ground was moving beneath my feet. The rest was a blur. I couldn't even remember getting into the taxi, but I do remember falling down the stairs, and she was above me laughing at me. "Come on," she said. "Get your ass up here." I struggled up the stairs, and before I know, I was in her bedroom naked. It was like I blacked out. I tried to sit up, only to find myself tied to the bed by my arms and legs. I lay there delighted, don't get me wrong, but something still felt off about it all. I had dozed off for a bit, and I'd been woken up by a weird screeching sound. "What you doing?" I said, as she was wrapping up my legs with cling film. "Hush now," she said. "This is the best bit." I was no longer tied to the bed, but I felt very numb and couldn't move my arms and legs. She kept wrapping me up from my legs upwards. I was screaming at her to stop, and she had placed some cling film in my mouth to shut me up. I was struggling to breathe at this point, and had tried my best to dislodge the ball of cling film from my mouth. Eventually, I was totally wrapped from head to toe. I could barely see outside the cling film. She left the room, and I gave out some muffled screams. Then I felt myself slowly fading away. I woke up, but was now the next day able to breathe. This time there were people looking at me. They removed most of the cling film and had resuscitated me. I wasn't aware of this till they told me. It had turned out that I wasn't actually in Laura's flat, but an old-fashioned hotel. The police were all over me, asking me questions about what had happened. I attempted to show them her Tinder profile, but she had deleted the page. I'm grateful to my rescuers that had saved me, but forever traumatized by this incident, and I end up with panic attacks when I see people that are similar to her. It took me a few years to finally trust people enough to go on dates, but I'm still on the road to recovery mentally. I'm just glad that I'm still alive, but wondering if she's still out there, and if there are others like me that didn't make it. He also confirms in the comments that his drink was spiked. I know this sounds like a very cliche horror story, but there is a bit more to it. A few months prior to this post, a different person made a post with very similar content. Tinder Date with the Devil's Daughter. I won't read this one out, but it's a very similar story, but the names are different. In the story I just read, the woman's name is Laura, but in the other post it's Linda. I mean, if this story is real, then it's pretty clear that the woman in question uses fake names to not be as easily traceable. This is a super interesting case since OP even provided video footage as proof. And there are also multiple updates to this case, so let's start from the beginning. A user named blueblackjupiter made a post on the RRBI subreddit almost a year ago. In this post, she shares her experiences and proof that her upstairs neighbor is stalking her. Well, she calls it stalking, but I wouldn't say it is. At the same time, I have no idea how to describe it. It's a very uncommon behavior. It reads, I can't even begin to describe how unbelievable and frightening the situation is. It started shortly after I moved into my apartment on the 1st of September 2020. My therapist picked up on the fact that I seemed uneasy and asked if I felt safe. At the time, I hadn't tuned into my surroundings much, but realized she was right and I hadn't been relaxing. I'd soon learn why. Inexplicably, my neighbor above would follow me from room to room and hover over me. For example, if I'm in my bedroom, she will already be in the room above it. If I get up to go to my kitchen, she will tail behind seconds after. If I go back to my room, she will do the same, sometimes stomping. She's literally my shadow. For the first few months, she did this nearly every single time I got up to do something, even during more intimate moments, like taking a shower or using the bathroom. Dumbfounded, I asked friends if they'd ever been able to hear the downstairs neighbors. I've never heard them in past places and can't hear those below me now. I took detailed notes for a week before realizing things weren't a coincidence. The first person I told was my therapist. She encouraged me to seek out an evaluation, and I did. It sounds crazy, but for the longest time, I've suspected there might be hidden cameras in my apartment. There have been too many things I've done that she's reacted to that wouldn't be possible without seeing me. And honestly, hidden camera crimes will become more frequent once people realize how easy they are to get on sites like Amazon. They are already an issue in places like South Korea. Why I think there is more to this. She never ever leaves her apartment and until May never appeared to have any visitors. Those visitors were some of the tenants on my floor. They moved out last weekish. When I complained to the landlord in October, kept it vague to not seem insane, he told me maintenance was never able to get into her unit. He also said 2 people lived there and that one was unemployed. He said he would talk to her in person, which I didn't get as we were still in lockdown. Landlord then went MIA and hired property management. Her roommate secretly moved out last year. All the tenants on her floor moved out by June. All units in the building are in September leases with the exception of one. One of the tenants on her floor had a roommate who appeared to move out during the middle of the year. Someone left a bottle of bleach square on my doormat. I suspect she might have done it. I cannot hear the tenants below me and I could barely hear those next to me before they moved out. The only sounds I really hear from my upstairs neighbor are her stomping, smoke alarm, and when she first turns on her shower. This isn't an insulation problem. Never got a signed copy of the lease. This has caused me a significant amount of fear and exacerbated my medical issues. I have lost months of work and I've spent nearly a quarter of my lease living with friends. This is a very strange situation, and given how folks in my periphery have behaved, I believe someone knows something. I can't keep quiet about this any longer and fear she might do this to someone else. I'm hoping that by sharing this story, the community might be able to help me with the following. Identify places where cameras can hide, detecting different types of cameras, Wi-Fi enabled, SD card based, etc. Any help with this would be so appreciated. Thank you for your time. So it's maybe a bit confusing as to what she even said in this post, but let me make it clear once more. And she is claiming that her upstairs neighbor has hidden cameras installed in her flat and is following her between rooms, basically mimicking how she walks through her own flat. I know this sounds completely unrealistic, but she even provided video footage of this happening. It's a 9-minute clip of her going through her own flat, and the neighbor upstairs always being on top of her, following her from room to room. In total, she made 5 more updates on this. In the first one, she says that it's almost comical and a new way of stalking someone. The second one is her describing that she invited a friend to see if there would be a different pattern from the neighbor, and there actually was. Last 3 updates consist of her talking about how she scanned through her rooms for hidden cameras, but couldn't find any. Honestly, I personally doubt that there were any hidden cameras installed in her room. I think the upstairs neighbor was just listening to her walking through her rooms and following her maybe, and that's about it. It also may just be a coincidence. Only way to really find out would be to directly talk to her, but according to other comments, that doesn't seem to be an option, since OP even said that she took her to court, but was unsuccessful. So unfortunately, while I was looking into this topic, the subreddit has been unsurprisingly banned off of Reddit, but I managed to grab a few screenshots. This will be only a very short coverage of the subreddit for obvious reasons. Before we start, what even is hybristophilia? It describes an attraction to those who commit crimes. In some cases, this may be directed toward people in prison for various types of criminal activities. The posts in the subreddit are very odd. It honestly almost seems comical. Before we start, let's have a look at the subreddit's description. It reads, hybristophilia is a paraphilia defined by the romantic attraction to a partner who has committed an outrage or crime. One post is from a user that asks whether it is wrong to like Brandon Tarrant. Unfortunately, I can't go into specifics as to who this guy is. If you don't know, maybe look up the name. Anyway, she continues with the following. I know it's ironic for me to post this in a subreddit that is mainly consisting of girls and boys attracted to perpetrators, but I've talked to my friends who have crushes on Dylan or Eric or other perpetrators, and I tell them that I like Brandon Tarrant, and I get shamed for it, so is it wrong of me to like Brandon Tarrant because of his crimes? While this is already really weird, the reply under this post is even more worrisome. I agree with everything you said about Brandon. I'm not just attracted to how he looks, I also think that he's a hero. She even goes so far to say that she can sympathize with what he did, and that he isn't in the wrong for doing it. Others even say that they would like to send letters to him and stuff. It's so unbelievable to read, I'm honestly speechless. Then you also had this one post here that was cross-posted, which is kinda cringe, but okay. There are a few more posts, but they pretty much are all the same. Mostly young girls admiring people that committed crimes and even justifying their behaviors. It's just really frustrating to go through, to be honest. So this is an update on a user that you probably know already. I made an entire video on this before. If you haven't seen it, check it out, since I won't go too much in depth in this video. The user Snappedfingers would make numerous very odd posts about being able to see paranormal things. Not only was this user able to see paranormal activities, they also were haunted by them. This user then would go out of their way to make certain sacrifices to get rid of him. Snappedfingers was convinced that these paranormal beings are coming from a hell portal in the Paris catacombs. Snappedfingers described their entire journey. In the end, they wanted to film themselves closing the hell portal in the catacombs, but we never got an update. Many have guessed that Snappedfingers went missing in the catacombs and just didn't make it out there. Nearly 2 years later, and we get an update on Snappedfingers. Well, it's definitely an odd update. They made a random post saying that they were able to use Halo mods in verses. People were curious and asked whether they saw any portals in the catacombs. Snappedfingers couldn't find any portals and was barely inside. They made a final post on their own subreddit named Dimensional Breach. It reads, last post. This situation has spread farther than ever intended. Originally, I would have been overjoyed, as it would have meant furthering my delusional mission, but now it's just a monument to my mistakes, failures, and overall an embarrassment. I hold no ill will towards anyone, including my former Discord associates. I'm sorry for dragging the few people I know into the mess that I created. It was never my intention to burden others. I'm also sorry that I was unable to fulfill the promises that I made there. As the situation stands now, lots of my personal information is public. and a multitude of videos have been made, effectively solidifying my downward spiral in stone and shining a spotlight on it. In order to move on and rebuild, I intend to separate myself from this incident. I've considered deleting all of my posts, but everything at least on the Reddit front has been made into video format, making the effort pointless, so it will remain. My brief return is intended to provide closure to your kind people and hopefully finally put the situation to rest, instead of leaving it as an open beacon to the curious. Without going into too much detail, I'm obviously not dead, and even though things are not perfect, I'm improving despite minor hiccups here and there. I intend to distance myself from this and will take the necessary steps to achieve that in order to return to normality. I appreciate the goodwill from the kind people here that have come and gone, as well as those who spread misinformation regarding the situation. With the amount of conflicting and tacked on information that has formed over time, a shield of sorts has been forged, and which I am grateful for. With any luck over time, this whole thing will all be just lost in translation or written off as nonsense. Lastly, I have an enormous amount of messages that I cannot humanly sort through. If I have not answered your message, please don't take it personally. With that, I wish you all well, and goodbye. Now, there are a lot of things that are more than questionable about this return of Snappedfingers. First of all, why wait for so long to make an update? I honestly don't see any reason in that. Secondly, why are there no detailed threads or posts or comments about what happened throughout the 2 years? Lastly, and most strikingly, the account Snappedfingers was hijacked. In a post that Snappedfingers made on the subreddit Steam, we can see that their post has been deleted and a reason was provided as a reply. In this reply, we can see the bot moderator stating that Snappedfingers' account was hijacked. Also, just before this account posted again, there was another account, clearly a fake, who pretended to be Snappedfingers, most likely to get attention again. Since this didn't work out, they abandoned the account. So the current account holder is most likely not Snappedfingers, but rather someone else who guessed the password or hacked into the account to fool others. I have no idea what they gained by doing so, but I thought I'd share an update on this. I guess there is a slight chance that it's really Snappedfingers, but I'm more inclined to believe that it's a different person. So this one comes from a user named CoolMom81. It reads, I had gotten out of an 8-year abusive relationship and met someone on a popular online dating app. To be honest, I wasn't looking for anything serious, just someone to go watch a movie or have a drink with every now and then. I had 2 boys and was happy and living a peaceful life on my own after going through hell. So I meet this guy who is just a couple years older than me, and he had turned his life around. When he was younger, he used to be in gangs and now he was into working out and staying really fit and doing family stuff. I guess you can say I felt protected by him. He was a hard worker, self-sufficient, had a son, and he loved going to the gym every day. I myself had kind of a crazy past, but overcame, and so we seemed like a good fit. We would go to dinner, movies, normal dating stuff, but he eventually wanted to spend more and more time together, and I was having trouble giving up all my free time for him, and he would get angry about this, like really angry. After being with a controlling, possessive asshole for so long, this was obviously a red flag, and after 3 months, I told him I didn't want to see him anymore. He said he needed to confess something to me. He admitted to me that he was using steroids and that was the reason for his mood swings. He cried and said he was sure that was the reason and was willing to stop if it meant he could have another chance, and I obliged, but only under the condition that we remain friends. Things were okay for a while. We saw each other maybe every other week, and he started wanting to see me every week, to which I told him that I was not interested in being anything other than friends at the moment, since I was not ready for a relationship. He tried to talk me into giving him another chance, but I just didn't find myself interested in him in a romantic way, and so I insisted that we just be friends. I stopped talking to him because I got mad at his insistence that we still talk every day, since he said that's what friends do. He would always ask me about my whereabouts and ask for pictures of who I was hanging out with, and I told him that this is not what friends do, and he just insisted that he just wanted to see what I was up to. Fast forward 6 months later, and I hadn't spoken to him at all within that time. I was happy and living my life, and on one particular night when my youngest son was at his dad's, I went out to a local bar with friends. My oldest son, who was 13 at the time, was home alone, so I left a little early to make it home around 10 PM. I lay down in bed and go to sleep. So a little info on my living situation. I had been living in my condo for almost a year now, and we lived in a great, safe community, and I would leave my patio sliding glass door open, screen closed, to get a breeze in at night. No biggie. My bedroom was close to the patio, and my son would sleep in the loft that was closest to the front door. I'm asleep when I suddenly feel someone slowly sit on my bed. I'm laying in bed, wondering why my son would come sit on my bed so slowly. He wouldn't. I turn around and it's not him. It's Mario, not his real name, laying down in bed next to me. I sit up and ask him how he got in. He's not answering me. He says, "I needed to talk to you." I said, "Okay." When you need to talk to someone, you don't sneak into someone's room. You call them. You leave a note for them. Literally anything but this. He said, "I didn't have your number anymore. I need to talk to you before it's too late." I didn't even entertain the "before it's too late" bit because I was livid, but something told me to keep my cool. I sit up and say, "Look, I really want to talk to you too, but not like this. Please, just leave and I promise we'll talk tomorrow. Call me tomorrow." He gets up and walks over to my side of the bed and starts rubbing my shoulders and is slowly making his way to my neck. He says, "Do you really want to talk?" I look him in the eyes and say, "Yes, I have been wanting to talk to you, but not like this. Please call me tomorrow." He stares at me while rubbing my neck and goes down to my shoulders and lets go. Says okay. This guy proceeds to exit through my patio door and jumps my patio wall, which tells me that is exactly how he got in. I freak out, check on my kid, he had no idea what was going on, locked all my doors, and I don't sleep the rest of the night. The next day I text him, and I tell him that if I ever see him near me or in my complex, I will call the police and to never contact me again. If you're wondering why I didn't call the cops to begin with, I knew he had a gun, so A, I was scared of being retaliated against for being a snitch, and B, I figured if I called the cops, they probably wouldn't do much, or just let him out, and I was afraid of what he would do after the fact. Either way, he left me alone, and I didn't hear from him for years. 4 years later, I'm going through Facebook and I see his face in People You May Know. I click on the picture and notice that it looks like a jail picture. You know, those pictures where the guy is clearly in a jail cell. I scroll down the page and his most recent post is him posting his address for his family members to write to. A prison address. So I Google his name and sure enough, articles after articles all with the same headline. Man arrested on suspicion of taking girlfriend's life. About 2 years after him and I dated, he shot the girl he was dating. That could have been me. And I feel really bad, thinking if there was anything I could have done to stop him. Even scarier thought is that you only got 12 years for taking her life. And there isn't much more to this. She never shared the name of the guy, most likely for privacy reasons, so there's no real way of confirming this story. Still, I thought it was an interesting read. Yo, you reached the end. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to check out my previous video on Reddit users that turned into criminals. Before ending this off, I want to quickly thank the patrons in the Elite and Legend tier, which consist of 44 Ashton Boothie YouTube, C, Christopher J. McCulloch, Courtney Occult, Krebs Ugen, Dark Sparrow, Dave Birkins, DEZ03, DJ Chest R, Electrocat, Eli Bueno, Ian Wenkmer, Findecano Astaldo, Foster Bradley, James Baker, Just Jackie, Kaneki Tobias, Dora Hansen, Lord of the Lizards, Madeline Tanner, Morgok C, Matt Weldon, Nikias Beardias, NX Equal, Rick, Santino Sierra, Shawnee, Wayne Keir, William Taylor, Amy Stringfellow, Alan Eberl, Elena Hedgeshoe's Mom, Andrea906, Bodie, Brian Cave, Brian Ashaf, Casey Lockie, Christopher, Dark Nalol, Dennis Greasefire, Digital Capybara, Erica Romero, Jeb, Cass Silver, Lunarus, Malia Schoenberger, Malcolm Mart, MG, Natalie Weston, Nick Castle, Noodles, Riley Bear, Vladislav Koshevi, Witch Corpse, and XXFOHV. Thanks to every other patron and the supporter here, I really appreciate that. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.